Hello, this is Mark Silverman, managing member and founder of Silverman & Associates, and I'm also a certified financial planner professional. I want to welcome you to the Saving with Silverman podcast. I'm glad you're here. Each week, we'll discuss different financial planning topics because making smarter choices about your money impacts the quality of your life.
Hello and welcome to Saving with Silverman, because making smarter choices about your money impacts the quality of your life. Thank you so much for tuning into the show today. I'm Mark Killian, your host, and alongside me, as always, is Mark Silverman, president of Silverman & Associates, serving our audience right here in Tucson and Southern Arizona. Mark is a certified financial planner professional and available to you anytime throughout the show or anytime at all by reaching out to 520-333-7601. You can call or text that number anytime, 520-333-7601. You can call or text anytime, but it's so important that you go ahead and take some action and get on Mark's calendar and come on in for a consultation. And we'll talk more about that throughout the show. But for now, Mark, welcome in. How are you?
I'm doing good, Mark. Always happy to be here. How are things for you?
Doing pretty well. Glad that you're here as well and looking forward to a good show. We got some good analogies and some good content to go through today. So hope you've got your thinking cap on. We're going to push you a little bit here.
Let's try it.
So let me ask you a question. You're out there in the lovely area in the Southwest. It's so beautiful out there. Have you ever had a craving or interest or anything like that at all, and maybe pursuing like a private pilot's license? Are you fascinated by all with airplanes?
I am. I did something in high school where we went up like in a Cessna called Wright Flight, and I sort of flew, took controls, and it was kind of a neat experience. But I do have a couple clients that own planes and that sort of thing. So it's definitely something to be said for having your own plane and avoiding having to go to the airports and deal with security these days and all the hassles of flying.
Well, I know in your industry and in your business, I know you do travel a lot anyway, so you're at least going to be very familiar with our topic. And what I want to do is I want to correlate retirement planning and flying together. Okay. But I think there's some similarities we can take some good lessons here from. So I know that you've got some experience, and I thought I'd just kind of find out if you'd ever had an interest in piloting yourself. I think it's pretty interesting. I'd like to do it, but I just haven't pulled it off the old bucket list just yet.
Mm-hmm. But same boat. Plus, I think it's quite expensive.
It is pretty costly from what I hear.
Yeah, so. Airplane hangars and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. But anyway, I digress. So retirement planning and flying. So let's talk about these. Let's see if we can test your wits a little bit and kind of make a nice correlation between these two events. So for example, a flight plan. That's pretty much the first place you need to start, or we assume anyway, for pilots and whatnot. They've got to kind of lay out and log where they're going. How can we relate that to retirement?
Exactly. I mean, that's why you need a financial plan. And we've talked about this before on previous shows, but too many people in this industry are just there to sell investment insurance products, and they don't really help the people that they're trying to help because we don't know if they're going to have enough money for retirement, or going to be able to pay for all the things that they want to do. Are they going to run out of money or not? All these sorts of things. So that's why the first step, at least in our process, is really developing a comprehensive financial plan so our clients can know what we can achieve and lay everything out, because everybody's plan is different, which is great, but we want to make sure before we even get into, which investments you should buy, we really want to have a plan as far as what we're trying to accomplish, and then we can really get into the details. But having a plan is really the first step. Just like if you were to have a flight plan, you want to make sure you're going from point A to point B. Where's point B? Right. You want to retire properly. You want to have this X amount of dollars. You want to make sure that you have health care coverage and long-term care, and, be able to do all the things that you want to do. But without a plan, you really don't know where you stand.
Yeah, because it's not like pilots just jump into the cockpit there and say, all right, here we go, and take off. They actually have they study the weather patterns. They have other planes and things to worry about. So they have a plan laid out. And of course, they might make adjustments along the way. And we'll talk about that in a minute when they're talking with air traffic control. But the idea is they still have their plan in place before they ever go wheels up, right?
Exactly. And too many investors are just buying investment and insurance products without really knowing, even if you're saving enough money, you don't really know where you stand or if you even have enough to last you and your spouse's life expectancy. So that's why, again, the whole crux of what we do is really to make sure you have a plan and making sure that whatever you're seeking to achieve is going to be achievable.
Yeah, great points, because in retirement, you don't want to just say, hey, okay, well, I'm retired, now what?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
You certainly want to make sure that you have a plan in place. And, you know, there's a lot of statistics out there we could go through and pull things up, and they can get pretty scary and pretty staggering. But the point is that a lot of people just don't plan. They don't save properly, and they get themselves into a situation when they get closer to retirement. So it's so important to just get a plan working for you. Because everybody's different. Your plan is not going to be the same as your neighbor's, so don't feel like you got to do that, but just get some form of a plan going. So let's talk about, now that we've got the flight plan up and set, Mark, and we're wheels up and so on and so forth, turbulence. I think we can correlate turbulence quite a bit, especially now, to our financial planning.
Sure. And that could be, in relation to, if you want to look at it as risk or, volatility of the markets. It's not always the win, but the set of the sail is what I tell people.
Nice.
So we can dial up or dial down the risk based on your comfort level, for one, and for two, making sure that you're on track for your goals. If you have a longer time frame before retirement or in retirement, that sort of thing, the more risk you may be able to take, as long as you're comfortable taking it, versus a shorter time frame. Let's say you're going to be retiring next year, for example, or you're already in retirement, you may not be able to handle that much risk. So it's important that you understand how much risk you're comfortable taking and making sure that that risk level is going to be appropriate to help you achieve your goals. And I think, that kind of looks at turbulence, because there is going to be volatility. The more volatility, the more downside, then typically the more upside you can expect, and vice versa. So I think that's important for people to understand, and that's part of the process that we go through, is really doing a good job as far as analyzing the risk and making sure people are taking the appropriate amount of risk that they're comfortable taking. Again, that's going to keep them on track for their financial goals.
Yeah. Now, so think about it like this. If out there listening to us, or Mark yourself, for me, like, are you a white knuckler, right? When turbulence happens, well, first of all, it's usually completely abrupt. I mean, every now and again, they'll come on and say we're going to be experiencing some, but sometimes you'll just get those pockets of air. And in, some people, just the littlest thing, they're squeezing the heck out of the armrest, right? They're white knuckling it. For others, they can tolerate it. It doesn't bother them so much. So the same thing correlates to your risk or your volatility. How much is comfortable for you? How much can you live with? And I think a lot of people don't really truly know what they're comfortable with in that regard, do they?
No, that's true. I mean, everybody wants risk when the market's going up, and nobody wants risk when the market's going
right.
down. Unfortunately, we don't have a crystal ball. But what I can tell you is you need to understand the risk that you're taking, and understanding what's the downside exposure that you have, knowing that, if you have more downside, then you should expect more upside. And if you are expecting a very little bit amount of downside, then you have a lower chance of getting a higher amount of upside. So it's really dialing the risk up or down, depending on, again, the two things that are the most important, which is your comfort level and making sure that you're on track for your goals.
Well, you're listening to Saving with Silverman here. Mark Killian alongside Mark Silverman, and we're having the Mark and Mark show again today. And we're talking about the correlation between retirement planning and flying, and how they can be a lot more similar than you might think. And if you'd like to talk with Mark about your situation, it's 520-333-7601. That is 520-333-7601 to speak with CFP Mark Silverman from Silverman and Associates. So, Mark, we've talked a little bit about the turbulence and the flight plan, some basics, right? And I mentioned earlier that once we're up and flying in a plane, you're in constant communication with some form of a tower, right? There's beacons, there's outer beacons, there's all different kinds of things for communication, for navigation, and so on and so forth, especially nowadays, right? Because we've got so much more things in the air. And so the same thing can apply when we're talking about retirement. You need to be in communication with your advisor, because little things are going to happen. Retirement, Murphy's Law, right? Retirement's going to happen, and things are going to adjust along the way, and you need to be able to adjust with it. Now, that plan that we talked about initially is there to help you, but it can be altered through communication.
You're absolutely right, Mark. I mean, the plan is a living document. What I mean by that is, when we build a plan, that's a snapshot of where you are today. Things are going to change for the better or the worse as time goes on. So we need to be able to adjust the plan as life unfolds and needs evolve and those sorts of things. If good things happen, we want to adjust that. If something bad, happens, maybe you lose a spouse or you take a big hit on your portfolio, whatever it might be, we want to be able to adjust the plan to keep you on track for achieving those goals. So it's important that people understand that the plan is not just a one-time thing where you get it and you're done. It needs to be updated as things change. And I think that's so important, because too many people don't think of it that way, but it really is, and things will change. I don't care what your situation is. The only thing we know for sure is things will change. So we just need to be able to adapt and address those concerns to make sure that we keep you on track, and as more information comes in, if you will.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and I'll kind of put it this way, Mark. I've never flown a plane. I'm curious to try it, but I've never flown one, so how can I know what to expect? And I've also never planned a retirement before, so how can I know what to expect?
Yeah, and you don't have to go at it alone. That's the beauty of it.
Exactly.
I mean, there's plenty of people that do, but if you find the right advisor then they can make all the difference in the world. There was a Vanguard study that was done a couple years ago that said the right advisor is worth about 3% per year. And you could Google it and find it on there. But, in all the different areas, if you find somebody that can keep you invested and not making emotional driven mistakes, that's huge. So, whether you want to call it a coach or financial advisor, however you want to do it, the right advisor can make all the difference in the world, and you don't have to go at it alone.
Well, let's go ahead and let the folks know how they can reach out to you and what that's going to look like as we talk about it so much throughout the show.
Sure, Mark. So whether you're a first-time listener to the show or you've heard me for a long time, if anything I've said makes sense or resonates with you, this is now your opportunity to come in and have a conversation with me in my office to go through this process we call the financial physical. And I can assure you, I will not be trying to sell you investment or insurance products. I repeat, this is not a sales meeting. This is far different than all the other shows that are here on this station. Rather, we're going to discuss your values and goals in a way, honestly, you probably never have. This consultation is designed for both individuals as well as couples. However, if you are married, it is mandatory that both spouses attend this initial meeting. So whether you're still working or already retired, this is a great opportunity to see what it looks like to work with someone who's actually required to have a fiduciary responsibility to look out for your best interests at all times. And as part of the financial physical, we will discuss your cash reserves, debt if you have any, insurance, all types, and how to best allocate your assets, and we'll even benchmark where you are now financially compared to where you want to be, so you have an even better perspective of what's required to achieve your goals for the reasons that are important to you. And this will become the foundation for developing a plan that gives you the highest probability of making that happen. This meeting will be valuable to you whether or not we decide to work together. There is no cost or obligation for this initial appointment. However, it is best suited for people who have saved at least $250,000. And as you probably are aware, I am a certified financial planner professional, and I believe the only one local here on the radio in Tucson, and the going hourly rate to me with a CFP such as myself can cost as much as $300 an hour. So this is a tremendous value and chance to finally get your financial house in order and keep it that way. And your only commitment is an hour or so of your time. We try our best to help everyone, however, our slots do fill up quickly. So I can only guarantee a complimentary meeting for the next 5 people that contact us right now. Please don't procrastinate, because making smarter choices about your money impacts the quality of your life.
Okay, and the number to call or text is 520-333-7601. That's 520-333-7601 to get started with your financial physical and Mark Silverman. 520-333-7601. Go ahead and call right now and claim one of those spots and get started today. No cost, no obligation. 520-333-7601. You're listening to Saving with Silverman. We'll be right back.
At Silverman and Associates, we believe you deserve a financial plan that's customized to your situation. That's because no one strategy could possibly fit your unique needs and goals. From strategizing to execution, our goal is to give you undivided attention. Come in for a visit today and learn what it looks like to put your retirement dreams into action. Call or text 520-333-7601. That's 520-333-7601.
You've got questions. We've got answers. Keep listening to Saving with Silverman.
You're back here with us on Saving with Silverman. Thank you so much for staying tuned in to the show. If you'd like to reach out to Mark Silverman, founder and managing member of Silverman and Associates, give him a call at 520-333-7601. You can call or text 520-333-7601. And I forgot to mention, go by the website as well, because it's redone. It's a very cool website, and it's easy to remember. It's the same as the show, savingwithsilverman.com. Savingwithsilverman.com. A lot of good tools and resources on there as well from Mark, and so you can check that out anytime online at savingwithsilverman.com. And of course, if you're here in the Tucson or Southern Arizona area, give Mark a call, because he can certainly give you a hand with your financial planning needs. He is a certified financial planner professional at Silverman and Associates. 520-333-7601. Well, Mark, let's go ahead and continue to talk about the stock market, because I know we touched on it a little bit with the volatility in the last section, but it's one of those things everybody's talking about right now because it seems to be somewhat impervious. And I think that leads us into a false sense of security. I know we've talked about this before, but between the disasters, the natural disasters, the hurricanes, the earthquakes, the Rocket Man syndrome, whatever you want to call it, that's going on in the world, it seems as though the market keeps cruising along. And I think that can get people in a little trouble because they feel as though we kind of forget, right, that this thing is cyclical and it's happened before.
You're absolutely right, Mark. I mean, I think, and I'm not here trying to scare people. I mean, there's plenty of shows on the radio that are, people just strictly selling annuities that are trying to scare people out of the market.
Right.
And I'm not here to do that. But I think, logic would tell you that, we are due for correction. This is the second longest bull market we've ever had. So with that being said, I think people need to be cautious. If you're, 20, 30, 40 years from retirement and you're listening to the show, that's not something I would be concerned with. But if you're, within 5, maybe even 10, or you're in retirement, maybe now is a good time to really analyze where you are in relation to your goals, the risks that you're currently taking, and making sure that it's suitable and comfortable for you. And so that's not a bad idea. But again, you should understand that, because there's a lot of people that, if you look at somebody that retired in 2007, right before the crash, or somebody that retired in 2009, when the market's been going up since, essentially, those two people had two different experiences, even though they retired in just 2 years apart. So you just want to make sure that you're doing all that you can for you and your family's sake. So that's what I would say is probably the important thing to do right now, and just kind of analyze where you're at.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about necessarily saying doom and gloom. I just think that it's important to discuss it, because it's kind of the elephant in the room, because it is cruising along, as I said, and I think you're smart to at least reevaluate your stance in it, because we all tend to get a little greedy, and so sometimes we don't maybe look at it with an objective view, if you will, that okay, maybe it's time to look at taking something off the table. Obviously, we still want to have something in the market for growth and inflation and things of that nature. I'm just simply saying it may be time to discuss, or at least think about, getting a second opinion on where you stand, because it's one of those situations where, again, if it does happen again, and there's some form of a downturn I'm sure is coming, it's just a matter of when, it may or may not be as bad as the last one. What do you think there?
Well, nobody really knows, like you said, but I think exactly your point. Greed is what drives a lot of people to get burned, if you will. So I think it always makes sense to get a second opinion, and now probably more so than ever, because at least you get peace of mind. If maybe you're doing everything that you can and the risk is appropriate and you're on track for your goals, at least you have peace of mind knowing that you're in good shape. But if you don't, maybe if there's something that can be changed, or maybe a lot of things that can be changed to make you on a better track, to help keep you invested, because that's really what this is about, is making sure that you could withstand, because we are going to have a correction. I can guarantee that. I don't know when, but I can guarantee that we're one day closer each and every day. And so the question needs to be asked, how much can you stand to bear? What's a comfort level? How far are you away from your goals as far as retirement? Or if you're already in retirement, is it going to have a severe impact on maintaining your retirement lifestyle that you're currently in? All these sorts of things. So we really do try to protect our clients and make them aware, because if you're in the market, it's going to impact you when the market goes down. But the question is, how much will it impact you? And that's based on how much risk you're taking. And we can analyze that. We actually have software that we can use, or we can actually back test it without having to move assets. We'll say, if we had another financial correction like we did the financial crisis, which was late 07 to early 09, how much would you stand to lose right now if that were to happen? And various other different things that we could show you. And that's an important exercise to do, just because it's important to understand, what's at stake. And you don't want your retirement plan getting derailed. If you're already retired, you don't want to go back to work. But if you're on, going to be retiring in the next couple of years, you don't want to delay that if you don't have to, by just making some changes and that sort of thing. So it's important. This is very, very important. I always say, health is number one, but your wealth is probably number two. Just think about that for a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're listening to Saving with Silverman here. We are talking about a possible market downturn at some point, and just making sure that you're prepared by getting a second opinion on your plan, or at least reevaluating with your current advisor how you're weighted, making sure that you're not too at risk in the event of anything that might happen. And of course, if you'd like to talk with Mark Silverman, who's the founder and managing member of Silverman and Associates, you can do so by calling or texting 520-333-7601. That's 520-333-7601. Also stop by the website, savingwithsilverman.com. So Mark, you mentioned protecting your clients. I think for a lot of us who aren't familiar with the different things that are out there, obviously a lot of lay people, we do what we do, right? And then you do what you do. We think, well, if I come out of the market, I really don't have any other options other than cash. That's not really accurate though, right?
So there's lots of different things that you can invest in. It doesn't necessarily all have to be in the stock market. You could be in bonds, and a lot of our clients are in bonds, but those give you a different type of return. Yes, they don't typically earn as much as as stocks, but they will protect you in a different way than the stock market will. So that's why you want a diversified portfolio. And if you're working with an advisor, hopefully you have that. But that all is going to depend on how much risk you're willing to take. And again, where you are in relation to your goals and those sorts of things. So that's why we spend so much time really analyzing a client's risk when they come into the office to really understand where they are, what their goals are, and making sure all those things are working together so that they have a solid plan. And we need to adjust as things change. If we do have a correction or taking some gains off the table after we've had this long run that we've had. And again, this could continue on. Who knows? Nobody really knows for sure, but it's just about being protected.
Absolutely. And, I think we get kind of pulled into this environment where a lot of us think only in those two extremes. We tend to think, okay, high risk in the market or not much and just sit on cash, but at least I'll be better protected. And, and I know this is a little bit redundant, but obviously these are not just the only two options, as you just pointed out. But I think a lot of times we don't have that education, or at least maybe we don't have that maybe mental mindset or emotional mindset to pull ourselves away and get that opinion and find out what other kinds of things that may work for us.
Right. And that's why I think it's important to work with someone who can work with all different types of investments. In full disclosure, I am securities and insurance licensed, so we work with all different types of things. I'm also independent, so I'm not tied to one company or one product. So I can look out for my client's best interest. I have no broker-dealer affiliation or anything like that. I actually have a fiduciary responsibility to do what's in my client's best interest. But all of that starts with having a plan, and that's why planning is so important before we can get into which investment you should buy or not buy. It's really understanding what your goals and objectives are, laying those out, and making sure the numbers work and everything that you're looking to achieve is even going to be possible. And if it's not possible, what is possible? And then we can make adjustments to see which is going to work for you and your family.
Well, I think it's important that we definitely do that because, as you've mentioned so often here throughout the show and on the program today, is that, it doesn't hurt to get that second opinion. You're talking about an hour of your time, and after 30 or 40 or 45 years or whatever the case it is of working, certainly it's worth that hour to have that conversation. And I really like the fact that you want to speak with both parties, with the husband, wife, the spouse, the partners, whatever the situation is, because it's important that both of the people in the relationship understand, at least to a degree, right? I mean, you don't have to know everything, all the nuts and bolts, but you certainly want to know, at least what's going on with your money. And that's a great part of the process that's your financial physical.
You are correct, Mark. So what I'll do is this. So just like you get a second opinion on your health, why wouldn't you get a second opinion on your wealth? So whether you're do-it-yourself or already working with someone, this is now your chance to go through this process we call the financial physical. Do you know what your investments are costing you? If you're still working, are you on track to have the type of retirement you've always envisioned? Or if you're already retired, do you know if you or your spouse are at risk of running out of money while trying to maintain your current lifestyle? I can assure you, I will not be trying to sell you investment or insurance products. I repeat, this is not a sales meeting. In this initial meeting, we'll address issues of importance to you, provide an overall view of your situation, and give you some general advice on what needs to be completed. This consultation is designed for both individuals as well as couples. However, if you are married, it is mandatory that both spouses attend this initial meeting, just like Mark mentioned. So whether you're still working or already retired, this is a great opportunity to see what it looks like to work with someone who's actually required to have a fiduciary responsibility to look out for your best interest at all times. This meeting will be valuable to you whether or not we decide to work together. There is no cost or obligation for this initial appointment. However, it is best suited for people who have saved at least $250,000. And as you probably are aware by now, I am a certified financial planner professional, and I believe the only one local here on the radio in Tucson, and the going hourly rate to meet with a CFP such as myself can cost as much as $300 an hour. So this is a tremendous value and chance to finally get your financial house in order and keep it that way, and your only commitment is an hour or so of your time. Just as you want to reach a healthy life from a physical standpoint, you also want to reach and maintain great financial health, so our financial physical is just what the doctor ordered. We try our best to help everyone. However, our slots fill up quickly, so I can only guarantee a complimentary meeting for the next 5 people that contact us right now. Please don't procrastinate because making smarter choices about your money impacts the quality of your life.
All right, let's get started with Mark Silverman right now, 520-333-7601. Mark is a certified financial planner professional, as he mentioned, so it's a great opportunity to get started with the financial physical. Get that second opinion on your wealth just like you would on your health. So 520-333-7601. Call or text or stop by the website, savingwithsilverman.com. That's savingwithsilverman.com. 520-333-7601. Call or text now. Get yourself on the calendar. You're listening to Saving with Silverman. We'll be back with more after this.
Learn the path to a worry-free retirement. Keep listening to Saving with Silverman.
You're listening to Saving with Silverman here. Mark Killian alongside Mark Silverman on the program with you. And it's story time. Time for us to ask Mark to tell us about a situation or a time that's come up that he's had to help someone. And this week's question, or story, I guess, if you will, Mark, is maybe a time when someone came into your office, sat down, had a conversation, went through that financial physical, and really kind of thought they were, had a high risk tolerance. But as you talk with them, went through your process, discovered more about them, you found that the tolerance wasn't as high as they thought. They were kind of, taken aback by that.
I just had some new clients that just came in. They came in a couple months ago. They actually called in from the radio. And so they came in, we were doing the financial physical, and I was looking over their stuff, and they're both retired. They were 100%, both of them, in stocks. No bonds, no cash, just 100% in stocks. And this was, almost all of their money. And so for somebody like that has a high risk tolerance, so you would think. So we went through the process, analyzed their risk, and found out that they don't have as much risk as they were taking. And we actually showed them, as I mentioned earlier, through one of our questions, how much they would stand to lose if we had another financial crisis. And so after showing them, they were pretty surprised to see how much they were exposed. The markets have benefited them up until this point because the markets have gone up. So being that aggressive has worked in their favor. However, once we do have a correction, they would take a severe hit that, quite honestly, they can't afford to lose. So we were able to show them how we can keep them on track while still maintaining their goals, and analyzing the risk and repositioning those assets to their comfort level, to a risk that's more appropriate for them given their situation, and keeping them on track for their goals. So, that's one extreme example. I've seen that happen a few times, but not to that extreme as far as, having somebody that's retired 100% in the stock market. Not saying that if you're retired, you shouldn't have 100% in the stock market, but very few people really are comfortable taking that much risk in retirement. So it just depends on your situation, but that's the most recent one that I've seen this year.
Well, if you'd like to talk with Mark about the situation, maybe you think that you have a high risk tolerance or a low risk tolerance, but you want to find out for sure, well, go ahead and get on the calendar and come in and talk with Mark about that. 520-333-7601 or savingwithsilverman.com. Either way, we'll get you in touch with Mark. Call or text 520-333-7601. We'll be back with more here on Saving with Silverman after this.
Did you know that Mark Silverman and his team offer a complimentary Get Acquainted meeting where you can learn more about what he can do for you? The goal is to determine whether you might be a good fit for each other. That's because the folks at Silverman & Associates are all about building long-standing relationships. They aren't offering you a slick sales pitch or a get-rich-quick approach to retirement. Instead, Mark offers a simpler approach to investing. It's based upon your goals, and his strategies are tailored to your needs. To find out more about his unique planning process, call or text 520-333-7601. That's 520-333-7601.
Picture this. Your financial statements have come in the mail. What's going through your head as you open them up? Maybe all that financial jargon is flustering. Maybe the numbers are confusing, or maybe those red arrows are leaving you in a funk. Don't base your future on a monthly letter. Keep listening to Saving with Silverman. Learn what true financial planning really looks like.
You're back here with us on Saving with Silverman, because making smarter choices about your money impacts the quality of your life. Mark alongside Mark Silverman. He is the certified financial planner professional at Silverman & Associates, the founder and managing member. If you'd like to reach out to Mr. Silverman, give him a call or text at 520-333-7601. That is 520-333-7601, or stop by the website savingwithsilverman.com here in the Tucson and southern Arizona area. Mark can certainly give you a hand. Again, stop by his website, savingwithsilverman.com. Let's talk about the final decade, Mark, and that sounds a little doom and gloomish, but I don't mean the final decade of our life. I mean the final decade of our working life. Maybe that, as we mentioned earlier, that 5 or 10 years or so, we'll just kind of leave it at 10, before we step into retirement. Some things to think about, just some good questions or some good bullet points, if you will, of things to consider as you're getting closer and closer to retirement, that we want to check off that list. So obviously the first thing is deciding what's important and what retirement's going to look like for you.
And that's really setting out goals. And, and retirement can be different things to different people. We work with a lot of people who truly do want to retire, meaning that they want to not work ever again. We also have some people that want to continue to work, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. Maybe doing what they've been doing, maybe at a lower level. We call it a work optional lifestyle, working because you want to, not because you have to. Or some people want to just do something totally different, maybe change careers and just do something that they've always dreamed of doing, or maybe spending time and doing something for a religious organization, or just donating their time to the Humane Society, or whatever it might be. So, retirement means different things to different people, but really understanding, what you want to do in retirement, whatever that may look like, and having a well laid out plan to making sure that, one, you have the money to do it, because certainly, hopefully you have the time to do it. And then maybe that includes traveling or whatever it might be, playing golf. There's lots of different things, but it's important that you have all these sorts of things. So before you decide to pull the plug, if that's what you choose to do on working, that you're not going to be in fear of having to go back to work because you're going to run out of money. So it's really having a well laid out plan is really what's so important.
Yeah, and ask yourself some questions like, are you retiring early? And maybe that's going to affect, how much you're going to pull in. Or are you working longer and will have a little bit more for the lifestyle you want? Obviously these are some of the questions that are first and foremost. Obviously there's no right or wrong answer. It's really going to be about you. Also sitting down with your advisor who can also give you that information that, no, maybe you can't retire early, or whatever the situation is. So that kind of brings us in your plan there, Mark, to making sure that we kind of know our numbers and understanding what kind of figures we're looking at.
Yeah, and most people don't know their numbers. So one of the things that we do in our process is really help to determine a budget. And when I mean budget, some people say, well, I don't stick to a budget, that sort of thing. I'm not saying you stick to a budget. What I'm saying is we need to know what you're spending. We'll do the projections of inflation and things like that and kind of give you some ideas of what health insurance might be looking like, long-term care, what your exposure is there, what's the strategy there. But really understanding what you may be spending now, and that can vary. So if you're still working, some people say you might spend 70, 80% of your working income in retirement. That's not always the case. In some cases, you may be spending just as much in retirement as you are when you are working. And in some extreme cases, we've seen where people are actually spending more money in retirement than they were spending when they were working. And one of the things you have to consider, I think that most people overlook, is the fact that when you're working, that occupies your time. When you're retired, you have more time. And certain things cost money. So you need to occupy your time with things that are going to cost money. So it's really looking at all those sorts of things and figuring out the best plan of how to make sure that you are going to have enough money to do the things you want to do, and also pay for the things that you may not want to do, i.e., long-term care coverage or what that might look like. So it's important that you have somebody guide you through those numbers. And we haven't even touched on inflation, which is one of the things most people really overlook.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing those numbers is another piece of the equation that you want to sit down and think about and process on over the last decade or so that we're working, making sure we're keeping this stuff up to date, working with our advisor. Mark, so you mentioned, the numbers, where's it coming from? So you need to estimate those income streams. And you may have different ones, different people, but you need to have a good estimation on what that looks like.
Yeah, and one of the things, mentioned pensions or Social Security and those sorts of things. Social Security is a big one. For most people, that's their only guaranteed income stream that they're going to have. So how do you maximize that? We have software where we'll actually guide our clients and help them and show them which is going to be the best option given their circumstance. And everybody's situations, again, is different. So trying to maximize that Social Security to making sure you get the biggest benefit that you're able to get from that. Looking at pensions. So some people have pensions. Unfortunately, most people don't. How do you maximize that? Do you just take it on your life? If you're married, do you take it on you and your spouse's life? Do you take a 50% survivor benefit, or 75 or 100? There's some strategies and some thought that should be given to that as well. And then looking at, do you have other income streams? Do you have annuities maybe that you've purchased? Do you have, rental income? Are you going to be working part-time? Or is there going to be income coming in from that? How much are you going to need? Making sure that you have all the income, and the income needs to be increasing. So the longer you're going to be retired, whether that's going to be 10, 20, 30, or in some cases 40 years, we need an income that's increasing to cover for inflation. Again, we talked about this a little bit earlier, long-term care, how's that going to look? One of the challenges we see with a lot of people that are going to be retiring prior to, say, age 65 is how are you going to cover health insurance? And that's a big one right now because that's all changing and we don't know it's going to look like next year, but we need to have some estimates there as well to figure out how you're going to pay for those sorts of things. Do you have a spouse that may be working where you can maybe get on their coverage, et cetera? So there's lots of different things there. What I tell people is, and through our planning processes, we're going to answer all the questions that you have, as well as bring to your attention things that you probably haven't even thought about yet, which you should be thinking about.
Well, you're listening to Saving with Silverman. Mark Silverman with us here, of course, talking about the final decade as we get close to retirement, questions to be asking your advisor and asking yourself and working on and working towards so that when you finally get there to retirement, you'll be prepared. And if you'd like to talk with Mark about that, it's 520-333-7601. You can call or text 520-333-7601. You can also stop by the website, savingwithsilverman.com. So, Mark, you touched a little bit on the healthcare. Obviously, getting a handle on that is becoming a bigger and bigger deal. We won't even get into the political part where they can't make up their mind, but it's just Medicare and things of that nature. There's a lot to really talk about and work through.
There is. I mean, there's Medicare, which we just kind of touched a little bit on, getting you to age 65, so you are covered there. Do you have the right supplement, that sort of thing? Medicaid, what does that cover, what it doesn't cover, all these different things. And unfortunately, the health component is a big piece of that puzzle, which needs to be discussed on how you're going to pay for it, what it might cost, how do we fit that into your budget, and those sorts of things. So, through our planning process, we do cover the health aspect. It's not just about buying or selling, investment or insurance products. There's more to it than that. And so, working with someone who can address these concerns and bring these concerns up to you, if you haven't thought about them, is so important.
Yeah, because the odds are, I guess the statistics are, is what 1 in 3 people are going to need some form of a long-term care help, and they can get pretty costly, and that can really do some damage.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are, I've seen anywhere from 1 to 3, even to 1 to 2. So depending on how you're going to do that, it's worth having a conversation about. If you have enough money saved, self-insure is obviously an option where you just pay for it if you need it. There's long-term care insurance, which is still available. That could be quite expensive depending on when you get in. And even if you do get in early, those are going to get more expensive over time, unfortunately, those premiums. And then you become in a situation where if you don't use it, you lose it type of situation. And I've seen that happen as well. But there are other ways that are out there that I think are a better option where you can use, like, for example, some type of universal life insurance that offers living care benefits that can pay for your cost of long-term care or help supplement that, where you don't lose that money if you don't need the care. And so those options work very, very well, in my opinion, and we use those quite a bit in our practice. But at least having those conversations and figuring out what available options there are, so when that time does come, or if it doesn't come, you have thought about those sorts of things and you can address those as they arise.
Yeah, not sticking your head in the sand about that issue certainly is something you need to do, because it does affect so many of us nowadays when it comes to the healthcare situation and long-term care planning, I should say. Mark, we'll finish off with just also making sure that you really understand how these needs are going to change over time. We talked earlier in the show that it's, your plan should be a living document and it evolves with you. And so you need to make sure that you're prepared to do that as well.
Needs will change. So, one of the biggest things that I've seen people make the mistake of is they retire and they wait too long to do the things that they wanted to do. Maybe it's a big trip. And then unfortunately, time goes on and maybe, they either can't afford it or health-wise they're unable to do that big trip that they talked about, and then now they have regrets. So, being able to do those things when you can, both financially and physically, is important. And so, most people are going to be spending most of their retirement money or doing the things that they want to do up until age maybe 80. Some people set age 85. After that time, you're probably going to be spending the money on healthcare, on things that you have to pay for that you don't want to pay for. So it's really looking at those sorts of things. But that's why it's important you work with someone who's gone through this process. And we've done it with so many people and seen them at all the different stages, so we can help you avoid making those same mistakes that we've seen other people make, and encourage people to do things in a more well thought out way so you're prepared and you're not committing those same mistakes that we've seen too many other people make, and pointing you in the right direction and really focused on giving you the right advice. That's really what it's about.
Well, before we step out to break, Mark, let's go ahead and discuss one more time about that process and how to avoid those mistakes.
Sure. So whether you're your first-time listener, I know a lot of people are getting back into town, our snowbirds are back, if you will, or you've heard me for a long time. If anything I've said makes sense or resonates with you, this is now your chance to come in and have a conversation with me in my office to go through this process we call the financial physical. And you actually get to meet with me. I don't pawn you off on somebody else. I can assure you, I will not be trying to sell you investment or insurance products. I repeat, this is not a sales meeting. This is not a sales pitch like a lot of the other radio shows are proposing. Rather, we're going to discuss your values and goals in a way, honestly, you probably never have. This consultation is designed for both individuals as well as couples. However, if you are married, it is mandatory that both spouses attend this initial meeting. So whether you're still working or already retired, this is a great opportunity to see what it looks like to work with someone who's actually required to have a fiduciary responsibility to look out for your best interest at all times. And as part of the financial physical, we will discuss your cash reserves, debt if you have any, insurance, all types, and how to best allocate your assets. And we'll even benchmark where you are now financially compared to where you want to be, so you have an even better perspective of what's required to achieve your goals for the reasons that are important to you. This becomes the foundation for developing a plan that gives you the highest probability of making that happen. This meeting will be valuable to you whether or not we decide to work together. There is no cost or obligation for this initial appointment. However, it is best suited for people who have saved at least $250,000. And as you probably are aware by now, I am a certified financial planner professional, and I believe the only local one here on the radio in Tucson. And the going hourly rate to be with a CFP, such as myself, can cost as much as $300 an hour. So this is a tremendous value and chance to finally get your financial house in order and keep it that way. And your only commitment is an hour or so of your time. We do try our best to help everyone. However, our slots fill up quickly, so I can only guarantee a complimentary meeting for the next 5 people that contact us right now. Please don't procrastinate, because making smarter choices about your money impacts the quality of your life.
Let's get started with the financial physical process with Mark Silverman at 520-333-7601. Call or text that number right now, 520-333-7601. Leave your contact information. Mark and the team will get back with you and get started helping you in whatever way it is you need to be helped. But you got to reach out and take that action. 520-333-7601. And of course, you could also go online and check him out there. And lots of good tools and resources on the website, which is savingwithsilverman.com. That is savingwithsilverman.com. You're listening to Saving with Silverman. See, it's the same name, so it's easy for you to remember. And we'll be back with more with Mark Silverman right after this. Stick around.
Life is complicated. It's full of twists and turns and complex issues. The last things you need when planning your financial future are confusing numbers and advisors who just offer you a sales pitch. We believe there's a simpler way to invest. Your financial plan should be built on a plan that's made just for you. It's all about discovering your goals and designing a strategy that will help you get where you want to go. And don't worry, we'll track your progress along the way. Stop wandering your way through your investing life. Come in for a visit today. To schedule a visit, call or text 520-333-7601. That's 520-333-7601.
When you reflect on your life, what would you like to see as your fondest memories? Summers at your favorite vacation spot? Ice cream with the grandkids after their first t-ball game? Maybe it was your great adventure across the world or volunteering with a local nonprofit. Of course, those memories are still in the future, although they're not as far away as you might think. Be sure you have a financial plan to make them happen. Don't find yourself worrying while enjoying that ice cream. Peace of mind is attainable in your retirement. With the proper planning, you can secure a meaningful retirement. At Silverman & Associates, we can help you make those dreams a reality. Schedule your visit with our team today. Call or text 520-333-7601. That's 520-333-7601. We want to make memories with you. Get started by calling or texting 520-333-7601. That's 520-333-7601.
You finished school and worked hard to get your first job. You told yourself you'd save for retirement, but that old jalopy you bought when you were 16 broke down, so you bought a new one. You started to save, and soon you bought your first home. Then came pets, kids, and your world changed some more. You worked hard to provide for your family. You made sure your kids got a good education. You might be sending them to school right now, or maybe it's the grandkids' turn. And of course, you're now making sure your parents are looked after. Through the years you lovingly sacrificed for your family, now it's time to take care of you. Love others well by taking care of yourself. Keep listening to Saving with Silverman to discover how to build a financial plan that'll continue providing for you and the ones you love for years to come.
You're back here with us on Saving with Silverman. Making smarter choices about your money does impact the quality of your life, so make a smart choice and reach out to Mark Silverman, certified financial planner, professional, founder, and managing member of Silverman and Associates. 520-333-7601 is your number to call or text 520-333-7601. And of course, you can also visit the website, savingwithsilverman.com. And it's time for us to do the request line here on the show. And we've got some questions that have been submitted to the website from around the area. If you'd like to submit one, please go to the website and do so, savingwithsilverman.com. So, Mark, let's see if we can help out Bess in Green Valley. She says, my retirement accounts seem to have done pretty well over the last couple of years. But to be fair, I don't really know what they should be doing. How do I know if my money is doing what I need it to? That's a good way of wording that. I like that.
Well, Bess, it's a great question. I mean, the markets have gone almost straight up. There's been a couple hiccups, but we really haven't had a correction since 2009. And we talked about this earlier in the show. But, you know, it's really important that you understand the risks that you're taking. So if you're, you know, a lot of people like to track themselves and compare themselves to the S&P 500, the Standard & Poor's 500. But if you're not invested 100% in the Standard & Poor's 500, you can't expect the returns of that if you're not invested 100% in that. And I can tell you, none of my clients are invested 100% in the S&P 500. They have a portion of it, but they don't have all of it in there. So you should be matched with the amount of risk that you're taking. And if you're not taking that full amount of risk, you shouldn't expect that type of return. So it's a good process to really evaluate and see, you know, how much risk you're comfortable taking. We have a process that we follow where we can actually, I mentioned this earlier, we can actually analyze your risk and then take your current portfolio without moving any assets and plug it into the software, and it'll show us how much risk you're comfortable taking and compare that to how much risk you actually are taking. And then we can show you back test it and that sort of thing. So that's an important thing to do. We're happy to do that for you. If you give us a call, we can go through that process and show you what's entailed in doing that. But it's a great question, but you should understand how exposed you are into the market versus how exposed you want to be into the market. And everybody needs a certain amount of risk in their portfolio, else you don't get any return. So it's important you understand that.
Well, great question, Bess. We certainly appreciate it. And as Mark said, if you'd like to talk more about this with him, go ahead and call 520-333-7601. That is 520-333-7601. Our next question, Mark, is from Howard, and Howard's in Saddlebrook. And he says, now that I'm retired, Mark, I need income from my investments. Should I invest primarily in dividend-paying stocks now?
That's a great question, Howard. You know, dividend-paying stocks is a good way to get some income from your investments, but they are stocks. So the other thing is your principal can go up and down based on the stock market. There's other ways to do it. That's certainly one of the strategies we use, but you can also use fixed income or bonds. There's some products out there that can get you some income too. It really depends on how much income you're looking for from your investments. You also need some growth. I don't know how old you are, but you still need growth. You still need an increasing income to combat inflation. We use a 3% rate here in the office for our planning purposes, but there's different strategies. You probably don't want to just go with one. You might want to use a multitude of different strategies, but certainly dividend-paying stocks is one strategy that can work well, but you probably want to use a couple different strategies as well. Certainly happy to have that conversation with you. Just reach out to us.
Well, again, thanks for the question, Howard. We certainly appreciate it. And if you'd like to submit a question to the show, go to Mark's website, savingwithsilverman.com. savingwithsilverman.com. That's savingwithsilverman.com. And of course, you are listening to Saving with Silverman here on the airwaves. And you can also reach out to Mark at 520-333-7601. That's 520-333-7601. You can call or text. And we're taking questions from around the area here that have come in. And we've got time for one more this week, Mark. And it's from here in Tucson and Larry. And this one's kind of interesting. I don't think we've ever had this one before, Mark. He says, I heard and saw a great presentation about investing in oil wells. And I think I'm ready to jump in, but I want to make sure I'm not making a mistake. A lot of information needs to be talked about.
Well,
there.
Larry, it's a good question. And I'm pretty familiar with what you're talking about. There is some tax benefits with oil and drilling that a lot of people get hooked on, or they use it as a sales pitch, if you will. I would be very, very cautious about doing something like that. It's very hard to track, if you invest into a certain oil well, if you're part of that one, or if they hit oil or they don't hit oil. I've seen many, many people get burned. In fact, I get calls all the time from these sorts of companies that are trying to get me to get my clients into them, and I have never found one that I felt comfortable with. So it's not a place that I go with my clients. Yes, I've heard stories how people have made, millions off of doing it. There's always those stories, but there's also a lot of other people, probably more so, that have lost money doing those sorts of things. And if you're going to one of these dinner selling seminars, or sometimes they're even lunches these days, I would be very, very careful, because all they're trying to do is sell you something. There's no such thing as a free lunch or free dinner, unless you just go and listen. But I would be very, very careful in doing something like that. If you have specifics on it that you want to run by me, I'm certainly happy to have that conversation with you, but I would be very, very careful before you invest any money in these sorts of things.
Well, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong here, or give me your thoughts on this, but in these kinds of situations, and as some people, we all get our heart or our mind set on something. We want to do something. If you really feel like you have to take those kinds of chances, shouldn't that be that smaller speculative kind of money that something you can afford to lose? I don't know, like that 5% category or something along those lines. Does that make sense?
That's a good point. It's like buying, a stock. It's like gambling.
Right.
So,
exactly, yeah.
Only put in what you're willing to lose. I wouldn't put your nest egg in there and in the hopes of that you're going to make some unreasonable rate of return. There's no such thing as a silver bullet that exists.
Right.
If it sounds good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
No. And so, just be careful. I have a lot of my clients have reached out to me about, dinner seminar that they attended, and it sounds like this, and this. Just be careful. You've got to know the pros and the cons, and I'm certainly happy to have that conversation with people, because again, if it's something that was that great, I would know about it and I would be offering it to my clients. That's my responsibility, to look out for my client's best interest.
No, there you go. That's a great way of putting it. No automatic home runs or guaranteed slam dunks. You always want to make sure you're doing the due diligence, Larry. So thank you for the question. And if Larry, Howard, Bess, anybody else, Mark, would like to come in for that financial physical, we'll go ahead and make that offer one more time. And what does that look like?
Sure. So we just had some great questions, and I'm always happy to answer those. You can go to the website, savingwithsilverman.com, and post those on there. Maybe your question will be read on the air. But here's now my chance to ask you a question. So here's a simple one, and can you answer it as honestly and objectively as possible? Aside from the happy hellos and how's the family, and aside from the occasional lunch or golf game, I get it. I'm as much friends with so many of my clients, they become true friends over the many years. But I think the question has to be asked, especially in light of the stakes. Is your current financial advisor truly adding value beyond a doubt? I repeat, is your current financial advisor truly adding value? It's a valid question, as a friendship or just relationship allows you not to be in a position to ask those critical questions. Are you talking about taxes? Are you talking about Social Security and income and risk and diversification and insurance and estate planning and healthcare? Are you having those annual reviews, but hopefully it's more frequently than that? Is there detailed follow-up? Is there accountability? If you are, if all of that is happening, congratulations, because you've got a great relationship, and send your financial advisor a thank you. But if you're not having that, if you're not feeling the value, if you're not having these in-depth conversations, then you owe it to yourself and really to your family to have a conversation with someone else, because if you don't, you're the one that's going to suffer. You're the one that's going to pay the cost, and it'll cost you in more ways than you'll ever know. Let us prove to you how we can help your money go further in retirement. Let us show you with our financial physical. I believe you will be surprised at what you'll learn, and this won't cost you anything. Give us a call or send us a text to 520-333-7601, 520-333-7601. That's 520-333-7601, or check us out online at savingwithsilverman.com. That's savingwithsilverman.com. Please don't procrastinate, because making smarter choices about your money impacts the quality of your life.
Okay, retirees and pre-retirees, great opportunity as we wrap up the show today to get that financial physical underway with Mark Silverman, certified financial planner professional, founder and managing member of Silverman and Associates. 520-333-7601. Call or text, as Mark said, 520-333-7601 to get started today. No cost, no obligation, but take the action. 520-333-7601, or visit him online at savingwithsilverman.com. Well, Mark, thank you so much for being on the show again this week. Certainly appreciate your time and your wisdom every week. I always learn something new.
Mark, I'm always happy to be here, and I want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Yep, and we'll do it all again. Yeah, we'll do it all again next week. Every week, make sure you tune in for more Saving with Silverman. Usually myself or Ron Stutz. We here along with Mark Silverman, again, the founder and managing member of Silverman and Associates. 520-333-7601. Until next time, we'll see you here on Saving with Silverman.
Silverman & Associates Wealth Management, LLC is a registered investment advisor. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, product, service, or investment strategy. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified advisor, tax professional, or attorney before implementing any strategy or recommendation discussed herein.